I'm a private chef and culinary consultant here in San Luis Obispo, which is a fancy way of saying that I cook whatever I can for a living, whenever I can. I've been a chef for 20 years. My first job was in a kitchen when I was 14. Just been doing it ever since. It's a lot of hours doing the same thing. I wouldn't pretend to know anything more than any of you, but I do have a very small skill set that I've learned a lot about, and in that skill set, I feel that I've learned a couple things that I can share with you. So this is one of them. I've definitely been a creative-oriented entrepreneur my entire life. Had all of the jobs that Veronica described, wherever you are. Definitely sold stickers to my buddies of drawings that I'd made, which turned into a t-shirt business, which turned into the car washing business, which I rolled over into a number of other different businesses. So just always did that. Definitely never stopped, and it was always creative-oriented. So always had something to do with drawing or painting or something like that. So being a chef was kind of easy for me. But it definitely wasn't until I made being a creative my lifeblood that I realized that somehow I had to channel that creativity. And when I was put in a position that I had to turn that into a product, I realized that just being creative is just the smallest part of the puzzle, that it takes actually figuring out how to use it and figuring out how to focus it to turn it into a profitable product. So what I want to talk about is scarcity, and in the context of this speech, I'm calling it limited access to resources. Whoops, I didn't need to do that. Limited access is access to a particular resource or being controlled or confined by self-imposed limitations as a vehicle for creativity. So forcing yourself to think inside of a box as a way of being creative. When it comes to creative endeavors, and I would argue in any entrepreneurial venture, I think that abundance can be a liability and scarcity can be one of your greatest assets. In my personal experience as a chef, and this is one of those tiny tidbits of information that took me 20 years to learn, I first recognized it when my walk-in refrigerator went down at a big weekend. I think it was like Valentine's Day weekend or something. So we had, I think $10,000 worth of product in the walk-in, and I lost it all. So I showed up that day. The walk-in was hot. It was like 65 degrees. All of my product was spoiled. So I totally had to wing it. We ran a table d'hôte menu that day. It was a menu over the night. I had 3 courses, and I had to go with stuff that I could source within like 2 hours and prepare. So went down to the docks, bought some fish, went out to the garden, pulled a bunch of crap, went to the farmer's market that just happened to be going on the same time that I was driving around looking for fish, and came up with a really small menu. It was small, but it was super tight, and people loved it. And I noticed for the first time that it had a genuine personality. It was like the first time I felt that my product just, for a reason that I couldn't explain, nailed it. And I figured out what that reason was later. So I kind of developed that. I didn't realize it at the time, but I rolled that idea into the 50-mile dinner. So we limited our menu to things that I could source within 50 miles. It was a new thing at the time. I know a lot of people do it now, but we were definitely one of the first. That was a success for the same reason. I rolled that into a 30-mile dinner, rolled that into a 10-mile dinner, and then eventually we went full tasting menu. And for 7 years, we served 14 courses to 32 people a night, no options, anything like that. And it was all because of this idea. And that was really natural development too. I knew that if I wanted to serve these tiny courses, to that many people, I had to be really specific with where I was sourcing. And so this all kind of developed from the same idea. Now the tasting menu was definitely, that was my product. That was the full development of myself as a chef. That was the expression of my profession, and it showed the overall acumen of my team. So if I had to relate this to one thing, my product was the tasting menu. My ultimate product was the tasting menu. And typically with tasting menus, at least what I've experienced, chefs have the ability to order anything, anywhere in the world, overnight. All the best ingredients, all the time. So setting out this seems like a good thing, having access to whatever you want at any given point. But again, I realized that I couldn't focus it. I couldn't get it to something that I could communicate in a logical way for people to understand. Until it's funny, Veronica brought up the gluten-free thing. So with 14-course tasting menu, you have a lot of dietary restrictions that you have to work around, which is next to impossible with that many courses. So I decided that our menus were going to be 100% gluten-free. There was going to be no refined sugars, no high glycemic carbohydrates, and all of our dishes would be easy to convert to vegan dishes at a moment's notice. So my team hated me. Like, imagine telling a pastry chef you can't use sugar. It's just death, But, that for the short period of time that they hated me, they quickly saw what I was doing and why I was doing it, and they saw how well we were developing. So each one of my chefs became just serious technicians. It was incredible the way that they could work around the restrictions that I was imposing. That was definitely that was groundbreaking for us. That changed everything. Me forcing this, and everybody got it. It took a while, but everybody got it eventually. And again, that was, our menu developed some serious personality. This is a dish that came because we had a lot of kale in the garden. So it was a green dish. The idea was we have a bunch of kale to use. We made a green dish. There's snails floating around there somewhere too, but it was just there was a bunch of green shit in the garden, so we made a green dish. And that was the qualifier, We had to use green stuff. It was a spring thing. So I want to talk about staff meal. Staff meal was composed of things that we put in the trim bin. So there's a single bin in the walk-in. All the trim that we developed from prepping this huge menu, and you come up with a decent amount of trim, goes into this one box. Every night, one chef had to make food for everybody else. All he or she could use were the things in the trim bin. So, at first, it seems like you get a lot of jumbled stuff, but things became really tight. Guys got really good at working with a single ingredient. It was amazing. I've seen this also in I call it roots cuisine. I don't know what else to call it, but it's the cuisine of poor people. They have amazing food, and I think it's because they become really good at using very limited resources. The most direct thing I can compare this to outside of the kitchen is economics. The idea of scarcity in economics, it's fundamental. Utilizing what you have access to immediately in the most efficient means possible tends to be the best route to profit. This is why God made budgets. It creates a positive constraint, which forces creative use of the resource. I've seen with project funding, if you're in a position to be funded, which it's awesome, these stories, people that haven't been in that position, so amazing. Would you spend your own money the same way that you would spend the money of a VC or somebody else? I mean, that's a big hurdle, I think, mentally to get past. And you don't even recognize it. You just think I now have the amount of money I need to invest in my own business. But would you spend it the same way if it was your money? I've also noticed something I like to call the Pinterest effect. And obviously, I think Pinterest is a great tool. And as a creative, you think having access to all of these images is an amazing thing. But I would argue that it definitely narrows the field of inspiration. I think it can get in the way of your own personal vision for your creation. And just knowing this allows you to use this type of resource more effectively. And allows you to look at images in other fields for inspiration, so other mediums. I used to look at architecture. I used to look at, the farmers I worked with were hugely inspiring just by things I would see growing in their field. So I stopped looking at images of other people's pictures or other people's food as a way to develop my own and maybe get inside my own head and be more creative. Last couple things, just career choice or choosing a major. It's a big step for a lot of people. What if you just forced restrictions on yourself? What if you decided, I'm going to prioritize by eliminating options that I just don't enjoy? And a lot of people have brought this up. I decided to major in something that I just thought was cool, and it didn't matter where it was going to go, and I had a great time in college, and can't say that I use it a lot. I was a political science pre-law major, but I guess it's, it's helped me to, hopefully not. Yeah, so that, or, what if you decide you're only going to do something that you're already good at? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I had a great philosophy teacher one time tell me that school doesn't have to be hard. Nobody decided a long time ago that school has to be hard. I think it's a great thing to consider. It is a lot of times, but it doesn't have to be. And my last one, this presentation was supposed to be 10 minutes long, and I think I nailed it. A little bit longer. But anyway, so that constriction alone, I had to pick one thing that I knew had worked for me time and time again. Here's another example. This is carrots cooked in carrot juice. It tasted like great carrots, So I hope that one thing that took me a long time to figure out helps you guys. Just if you can walk away with one thing, think, if I had $1 to spend, how can I turn this $1 into $2? And a lot of the times, it doesn't mean spending that dollar. It means putting that dollar in your pocket and dancing on the corner a little bit until somebody gives you another dollar, Thank you.